Progress.
Okay, we're up to Daf Ayin Beis Amid Aleph, the beginning of the Amid. So the Mishnah had said, you're allowed to harvest. There's an Isser Deraisa of harvesting before the Omer, but you're allowed to harvest if you need the space for an Ovel to have their meal or for to give a shear. Says the Gemara, my time, what's the source for this? Kitzirchem Amrachmana, the Pasuk says you're not allowed to have your own threshing, meaning the Issa Deraisa is threshing for your own personal needs before the Omer, V'loi Kitzir Mitzvah. But if you're doing it for the mitzvah purpose, i.e. to help an Ovel or to help Limit Torah, it's not included in the Isser. Then the Mishnah said, Lo yasa krichas, but when you cut it for the Beis Medrash or for the Avel, don't make it in bundles and make it nice and then cut it. Just cut it and let them all fall on the ground. My time, what's the source? We're always afraid. The Isser of cutting before the Omer is because we're afraid that while you're Isaac in the cutting, you're going to come to eat it. So while there's a heter to cut it for the Tzarech HaMitzvah, minimizing the usage and touching of these grains is better. And therefore, we don't want you to make it into nice bundles, which spends more time. Just cut it. Cut it and let them fall. That way, there's less of an opportunity for you to accidentally eat the grain before the Omer is brought. Okay. So what we're going to do is very quickly some drashas. The Mishnah had said, Lichachila, you bring the barley you cut the barley from standing grain. If it's already cut, you could bring it from resting grain. And then lichachila, you're supposed to bring it moist. B'diavad, you could bring it dry. And then it's doicha Shabbos. So the Gemara wants to know what's the source for this. So interestingly enough, the same word is like 7 drashas from the same word. I assume the cheshbon is that the same word is just a very inclusive word and just includes everything. But the Gemara says like this: Tanu Rabbanan, v'im takriv minchas bikurim. That you're supposed to bring the carbon oimer, matam oimer. Lefisha mitzvah lahavi minakama. Lichachili, you're supposed to bring it from standing grain, meaning you're supposed to cut the grain for the carbon. Minayin shemloi matzah minakama yavi mina umrin. How do I know that if all the grain is already cut, that you could still bring it from resting grain, from cut grain? Meaning, you get to the field and all the grain in Eretz Yisrael is already cut, so you have to just take from what's already cut. How do I know that you're yaitza with that? Tamaloimer takriv. Takriv means bring it in any way that you can. Keep going. Correct. Davarach another pshat. Takriv levisha mitzvah lahavi min halach. Lichachili, you're supposed to bring it from fresh kernels. Minayin shemloi matzi min halach yavi min hayavish. What if that year all you could find the dry kernels? How do I know that you could use that as well? Tamaloi metakriv. I don't think it's a machlokes. I think the point is takriv just means bring it any way you can. Doesn't matter. Cut, dry, no, all of it. Keep going. Davaracher takriv levisha mitzvah likser balayla. The next halacha from the Mishnah is that you're supposed to cut it on the night of Chol Hamoed. Minayin she'im niktzar b'yom kasher. What if you can't cut it at night and you cut it the next day on the day of Chol Hamoed? How do I know it's kosher? V'doichas Shabbos. And how do I know that cutting the Omer is doichas Shabbos? Meaning, let's say the night of Lag BaOmer is Shabbos. How do I know that you cut it even on Shabbos? Tam Eloimer takriv. And the Gemara just summarizes it up. Takriv kolshu, bring it in any form you want. Takriv mikol makayim. Takriv afilu b'Shabbos. Takriv afilu b'tumah. Bring it if it's cut. Bring it if it's dry. Bring it on Shabbos. Bring it during the day. Get the grain to the Beis Hamikdash. Okay. Now, what we're going to have, and this is going to take us to the end of the parak. And that is like this. The Mishnah said that if I don't, just make it clear. You're supposed to cut the barley. The lichachila mitzvah is to cut the barley and the night of Lag BaOmer at night. Let's say you didn't cut it at night, you cut it the next day, on the day of the Omer is brought, yaitza. Yaitza is b'diavad yaitza. The problem is, let's say all this out. The problem is, there seems to be a brisa that indicates you cannot cut it during the day. It's night or nothing. So the Gemara is going to explain this in Machlokes Tanoim between Rabbi and Rav Elazar bar Shimon of whether it's able to be cut during the day or dafka at night. And what we're going to talk about is what's the svara of HaMachlokes. Good. Says the Gemara, v'hatzanan, you're telling me you can cut it during the day, b'di'evid v'hatzanan, but doesn't the Mishnah say, kol halayla kosh l'k'tzir sa'omer, you could cut it at night, ulahakter chelavim ve'ivarim, and you could burn the sacrificial fats at night. Stop right here. Now, could you burn the sacrificial fats the next day? No. So you see, night is night. So, and the Gemara continues. Zehaklal, the Mishnah says, this is the rule. Davar shemitzvasa b'yoyim, kasher kol hayoyim. Davar shemitzvasa b'layla, kasher kol halayla. Now, things that are by the day must be done during the day, which means things that are done by night also must be done at night. So this indicates you cannot cut the omer the next day. It's Laila dafka. So this Mishnah seems to not hold like our Mishnah. So it sounds like there's day and there's night. So our Mishnah says you can cut it during the day b'diavad. This Mishnah indicates you cannot. So what's the explanation? So the Gemara says, Amar Rabba loy kasha, ha-Rebbe, ha-Rav Elazar ber Rav Shimon. It's a machlokes Rebbe and Rav Elazar ber Rav Shimon. D'Tanya. What is this machlokes about? D'Tanya. And according to Rebbe, you're able to cut it during the day, b'diavad. According to Rav Elazar Shimon, you're not allowed to. Now, where does this come from? This comes from the following machlokes. D'Tanya. Haya oimed umakriv minchas ha'omer. It's the morning of Chol Hamoed. You're sitting, you're the kohen, you're about to bring the omer. You're about to bring the carbon omer. Yeah? V'nitmes, and it becomes tameh. So here's the question. What do you do? So says the Mishnah, says the Gemara, Im yesh acheres, omer lehava acheres tachteah. This is who's talking here, Rebbe. Rebbe says, so tell the guys, the grain became tameh, right? The lechem, the carbon mincha became tameh. Go get more grain. And do the carbon again, but tahara. But stop right here. This is during the day. He's telling you to cut more grain. You can cut the grain during the day. Again, this is during the day. You're about to bring the carbon, and it becomes tameh. So you know what he says? Get more grain here. So obviously you can cut the grain during the day. Now let's say imlav. Let's say there is no grain in Eretz Yisrael that's tahar. So this is a carbon sibar. A carbon sibar is able to be brought in tumah. Tumah hutra b'tzibar, and therefore you're able to bring in a state of tumah. But omer loy have a bikeach v'shtoik. But we tell the kohen, don't talk about this too much. You don't need the kohen going around putting on a status, I brought in a state of tumah, because people's minds, they don't know the difference between a communal carbon, a private carbon, and it's going to confuse people. So we tell you, listen, if you don't have any other barley, no, bring in a state of tumah, but just don't stop talking too much. But what do you see? Get more grain and cut more grain to replace it, even though it's during the day. Comes Rav Elazar Rav Shimon, Amar Loi, Rav Elazar Rav Shimon Omer, Benkach ubenkach Omer Loi have pikech v'shtoik. Rav Elazar Rav Shimon says you can't bring more grain; it's already too late. Rav Elazar Rav Shimon's shita is you can only cut it at night. So if it becomes tummy during the day, there is no option replacement. Rather, bring it in a state of tumah and just don't tell anybody. Why? Shekol ha'omer sheniktzmar shaloi b'mitzvasai pasal. Because it says Rav Elazar Rav Shimon clearly, if you cut the omer at the wrong time, it is pasal. So it is a clear machlokes that according to Rebbe, you can cut it during the day b'diavad. According to Rav Elazar Rav Shimon, no. Night or nothing. Okay. So it's very clear machlokes tanoim. Good. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Chanam Rav Yechanan, Rav Elazar Rav Shimon, it's very clever. Rav Elazar Rav Shimon holds like his, Rav Elazar Rav Shimon is the son of Rav Shimon bar Yochai. Okay, so Rav Elazar Rav Shimon is a student of his father. Rav Shimon bar Yochai was a Talmud of Rav Akiva. So there you go. So Rav Elazar Rav Shimon, B'shitas Rav Akiva, Rabbi Shal Aviv Amra. So Rav Elazar Rav Shimon is following his father's Rebbe, Rav Akiva. Okay, now, what was Rav Akiva's shita? So let me just it's like a transitive. It's like 3 steps. What does Rav Elazar Rav Shimon say? Rav Elazar Rav Shimon says you cannot cut it on any other time. If you cut it at any other time, it's pasul. That's all Rav Elazar Rav Shimon shita. Cut it any other time, it's pasul. Has to be when the Torah says so. At night, the night of Chol Hamoed. So the Gemara actually says it's clever. Rav Elazar Rav Shimon holds like Rav Akiva and Rav Yishmael. What's Rav Akiva and Rav Yishmael? Rav Akiva shita is by the Bris Milah. It's a famous parak in Shabbos, Rav Elazar de Milah, and that is it addresses the bris milah is obviously Daicha Shabbos. The actual cutting of the baby is Daicha Shabbos. The question is, what about the machshirim? What about the preparations, the bringing the knife? Rav Akiva's shita is that if it could be done before Shabbos, it's not Daicha Shabbos. If you could have done this before Shabbos, it's not Daicha Shabbos. If it's impossible, if it must be done on Shabbos, then it's fine. There's certain preparations that must be done on Shabbos. There's certain preparations that can be done before. Bringing the knife could have been done yesterday, but certain preparations could be done. Meaning, so according to Rav Akiva, if it must be done on Shabbos, it's Daicha Shabbos. If it need not be done on Shabbos, it's not Daicha Shabbos. That's point number 1. And then you have Rav Yishmael. Rav Yishmael's shita is that cutting the omer is Daicha Shabbos. The cutting the omer is the mitzvah to Daicha Shabbos. So put it together. If you hold like Rav Akiva, Right? If you hold it's a mitzvah to cut the omer, and it's Doicha Shabbos, and you hold like Rav Akiva, that it's only Doicha Shabbos, things are only Doicha Shabbos if they have to be done on Shabbos, then by definition, it has to be done at a certain time. Meaning, that's how Rabbi Elazar ben Rav Shimon got his shita. He was trying to figure out, can I cut the omer at any other time than the Torah prescribed, or must be done at night? Now, we were talking about could it be done the next day, or maybe could it be done a day and a half earlier? That's the shaila. So Rav Elazar ben Rav Shimon says to himself, it has to be done that night, no other time. Why? Because he holds, like Rabbi Shmuel, that it's Doicha Shabbos, meaning if Friday night is the night of Chol Moed, it's Doicha Shabbos, and he holds like Rabbi Akiva that it's only Doicha Shabbos if it must be done that day. So by definition, the transitive property, that means it must be cut on that day, meaning that night, and it can't be done any other time. Because if it could be done any other time, why is it Doicha Shabbos? If you ask Rav Elazar ben Shimon, why is it Doicha Shabbos? Why should it be Doicha Shabbos? Cut it any other time. Cut it Erev Shabbos. Right? If the first night of Chol Moed is Shabbos, so cut it Erev Shabbos. Cut it Erev Yom Tov. Well, what's the difference? The fact that it's Doicha Shabbos, and you hold like Rav Akiva, that only things that are Doicha Shabbos must be done on Shabbos, then by definition it must be cut at the time that the Torah prescribes. Because if it could be cut other times, i.e. the next day, i.e. the day before, why is it Doicha Shabbos? Let him cut other times, whatever. If you believe this, now you could have just argued, if it's a mitzvah to do it on Shabbos, it's Doicha Shabbos, even if you could do it other times. But it's not Rav Akiva. Rav Akiva says it's only Doicha Shabbos if it must be done on Shabbos. And Rabbi Shmuel holds it's Doicha Shabbos. So if you put it together, that means that it has to be cut at the time the Torah prescribes. That's what Elazar ben Shimon's sheet, he puts it together. It says the Gemara, Rav Elazar ben Shimon b'shitas Rav Akiva Rabbi Shel Rabbi Amra the Tanan Klal Amar Rav Akiva Kol Malacha She'ef Shel Asayis Erev Shabbos Ein Doicha Shabbos. If it could be done Erev Shabbos, it's not Doicha Shabbos. And it's only Doicha Shabbos if it must be done on Shabbos. That's point number one. And B'savar like Rabbi Shmuel, and he holds like Rabbi Shmuel, Damar K'tziras Omer mitzvah. That K'tziras Omer is a mitzvah to Doicha Shabbos. D'Tanan Rabbi Shmuel Omer Ma Katzir Ma Chorish v'Katzir Rishus. That when the Torah asks Katzir, it means optional Katzira. Yatsa Katzira Omer Shi mitzvah. But you're allowed to cut the omer on Shabbos because it's a mitzvah. So it's a mitzvah, it's Doicha Shabbos. And Rav Akiva holds the only thing that's Doicha Shabbos is if it must be cut at a certain time on Shabbos, which means you can't cut it any other time. You can't cut it the Erev Shabbos. And you can't cut it the next day as well. The Gemara speaks it out. And if you believe you could cut it at other times, now again, we were talking about the next day, but I would argue the next day, Erev Shabbos, the day before, whatever. If there are other times that are optional for cutting the Omer, Amai Dachi Shabbos. Why would it be Doicha Shabbos? Niktzar Erev Shabbos, just cut it Erev Shabbos. Ela Mididachi Shabbos, the very fact that it overrides Shabbos, Shmamino Niktzar Shaloi B'mitzvah Pasul. It means that you have to cut it at the time the Torah prescribes. So Rabbi Elazar ben Rav Shimon holds of a combination of Rabbi Shmuel, which we assume is a given that it's Doicha Shabbos, and Rav Akiva. Now here's the issue. Who is Rabbi Elazar ben Rav Shimon arguing with? He's arguing with Rabbi, who says that you can cut it the next day. Now, that would mean, if Rabbi Elazar ben Rav Shimon holds like Rav Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel, that means Rabbi does not hold like Rav Akiva. Here's the issue. Rebbe was a Talmud of Rav Shimon, who was also a Talmud of Rav Akiva. So why are we assuming? The same way you're assuming that Rav Elazar ben Rav Shimon was a student of his father, Rav Shimon bar Yochai, who was a student of Rav Akiva. Rebbe was also a student of Rav Shimon bar Yochai, who is a student of Rav Akiva. So why are we assuming that Rebbe doesn't hold like Rav Akiva? So says the Gemara, well, listen, it's possible. It's possible he doesn't hold like Rav Akiva, but we have to sort of bring proof to that, because your whole presumption is that it's unlikely he would argue with his Rebbe's Rebbe. Fair. So then, why are the same way you're assuming it's unlikely that Rav Shimon would argue with Rav Akiva? Why are you comfortable saying Rebbe argues with Rav Akiva? So the Gemara says, "Rebbe lav Talmid de Rav Shimon." Rebbe was also a Talmud of Rav Shimon. Rebbe and Rav Shimon were colleagues. The Vatanya, the Brisa says, "Amar Rebbe kishahayinu lamdim Torah etzel Rav Shimon b'Tekoa." When we were in Tekoa and we were learning Torah by Rav Shimon. We would carry oil and towels from one chatzah to a gag, and from a roof to a karfif, Now this is related to the laws of Shabbos of carrying from one private domain to another private domain. It's not the point. The point of the story is he learned by Rav Shimon. So the same way you're not comfortable saying Rav Elazar ben Shimon argues with Rav Akiva, why are you comfortable with Rebbe arguing with Rav Akiva? And now we're back to the original problem, which is, why would Rebbe allow you to cut the omer at a different time if he holds like Rabbi Shmuel that it's Doicha Shabbos, and he holds like Rabbi Akiva that it's only Doicha Shabbos if it has to be done at that time and not any other time? So what's going on over here? So the Gemara answers, Rebbe holds like Rav Shimon, meaning, normally we don't like to say that Rebbe argues with Rabbi Akiva. But in this case specifically, Rebbe holds like another Rav Shimon. What's the other Rav Shimon? There's a shita of Rav Shimon. Savar lo ki'idas to Rav Shimon. Titania, Rav Shimon, Bo'rei kamach chaviva mitzvah b'shaitai. Look how precious it is to do a mitzvah at the prescribed time. Shari hekter chalavim ve'ivarim kesherim kol halayla v'lo hiyamamtin l'hu achetechshach. Okay, what it means like this. Go to the next page. What it means like this. I bring a carbon on Shabbos. It's Doicha Shabbos, yeah? I do the Zrikas Adam, everything's Doicha Shabbos. Shchita is Doicha Shabbos. You're the Kohen, Shragi's the Kohen, and he's got the sacrificial fats. It's Shabbos afternoon. So what do we tell him to do? Do you burn the fats on Shabbos? Yeah. Why not wait till Motzei Shabbos? You're able to burn the fats at night. So why don't we tell someone, wait till Motzei Shabbos? Yeah, but it could be avoided. Right, you just told me Rav Akiva's whole thing is that you're only Doicha Shabbos if it must be done on Shabbos. This does not need to be done on Shabbos. It could be done Motzei Shabbos. You know what it says Rav Shimon Bar Yochai? Kama chaviva mitzvah b'shaita. How cherished it is to do a mitzvah at the prescribed time. I don't push off mitzvahs, even though technically it could be done at a time that's b'di'evet. I do it l'chachila, even if it overrides Shabbos. So says Rabbi, I hold like Rav Shimon. I hold that really you could cut the Omer Erev Shabbos, and you could cut the Omer the next day. So why am I cutting it at night and it be Doicha Shabbos if I could do it the next day or do it Erev Shabbos? The answer is Kama Chaviva Mitzvah B'Shaita. So really it could be Rebbe holds generally like Rav Akiva, but in this case specifically, we're arguing that Rav Shimon Bar Yochai argues with Rav Akiva. So by the way, it's interesting. So Rav Elazar Bar Shimon would be holding like Rav Akiva over Rav Shimon. It's like a weird thing that Rav Elazar Bar Shimon would be bypassing his dad and going to his father's Rebbe. It's interesting. The point is, we're assuming, because we're making a presumption, that what Rav Shimon Bar Yochai said is that you're allowed to burn the sacrificial fats on Shabbos, and we don't wait till Motzei Shabbos because Kama Chaviva Mitzvah Shaita, how nice it is to do a mitzvah at the prescribed time. So we argue the same thing should apply to cutting the Omer. Really, Rebbe's right. You can cut the Omer the next day. You can cut the Omer the day before. So why are you cutting it at Friday night and being Doicha Shabbos? The answer is because Kama Chaviva Mitzvah Shaita. So, true, but it's a little funny that Rav Elazar Bar Shimon would be arguing with his father. All right? Yeah, I understand. The Gemara is going to reject it. The Gemara is going to say, the truth is, you can't build a shita off of this teaching of Rav Shimon. What's Rav Shimon's shita? If I sacrifice a carbon, if I mashach a carbon, I could burn the sacrificial fats on Shabbos, even though I could wait till Motzei Shabbos. So you want to argue from there that even if you could do it at a different time, it's Doicha Shabbos. Not so true. The Gemara, I'll say it out, so we'll say it inside. The Gemara says, that's not fair. Over there, it's different because you were already Doicha Shabbos within that carbon itself. Meaning, you're talking about a carbon oila, yeah, the tamid, whatever, the tamid, yeah, or one of the musafs for Shabbos. You were already Doicha Shabbos with the shchita. So you want to know if you could burn the sacrificial fats? It's not like a new Chilul Shabbos. It's just a continuation of the Doicha Shabbos. So Rav Shimon says, Kama Chaviva Mitzvah B'Shaita will tell you that you could burn it because you've already been Mechavol Shabbos by shechting the animal. But to do it in our case, which is, I'm cutting it. It's the first time I'm being Mechavol Shabbos, is by cutting the wheat and the barley. And I could do it Erev Shabbos, do it Erev Shabbos. Meaning, you can't build a shita off of this Rav Shimon. This Rav Shimon is specifically a case where I already was Doicha Shabbos with the shechting of the carbon and the Zrikas Adam, and now you want to know if I want to do another Doicha Shabbos of the burning of the fats? Yeah, you already did the mitzvah. You already started the mitzvah, just finish it. But to build the shita that, like you see from here, that Kama Mitzvah Chaviva B'Shaita, Chaviva Mitzvah B'Shaita, you could just be Mechal Shabbos if you could avoid it? No. Rav Akiva doesn't argue with Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon agrees with Rav Akiva. It's dafka in the case of Hekter Chalavim, that case, because you were already Mechal Shabbos, by the shechting it, that we allow you to just finish it, finish the act. But to apply it to this case, which you're cutting barley for the first time on Friday night, where you could do it Erev Shabbos, no. Well, it's a mitzvah. I'm not talking about Chil Shabbos. I'm talking about a guy who's smoking weed in the back of the alley. I'm talking about a mitzvah. The point is, you already started the mitzvah. You already were Doicha Shabbos. When I say Chil Shabbos, I mean you already desecrated Shabbos for the sake of a mitzvah already. So no, finish it. Continue it. Says the Gemara, V'Rav Elazar Rav Shimon lo shmielei. What do you mean? So Rav Elazar Rav Shimon doesn't hold like his father. He bypasses his father's shita and holds like Rav Akiva. No. Elashani hasam shari dachta shchitas haShabbos. Rabbi nami hachi dachta shchitas haShabbos. So we're back to the problem, which is Rav Elazar of Shimon holds that it has to be cut the barley on Shabbos because he holds like Rav Yishmael that it's Deicha Shabbos, and he holds like Rav Akiva that you're only Deicha Shabbos things that must be done on Shabbos. So what's Rebbe's shita? You don't have to cut it on Friday night. You can cut it to the next day. You can cut it the day before. So why is it Deicha Shabbos? Right? Rabbi also should hold like Rav Akiva and should hold like Rav Yishmael. The answer is he holds like Rav Akiva that you're only Deicha Shabbos things that must be done on Shabbos. But wait a minute, this could be cut Erev Shabbos. The answer is he doesn't hold it's Deicha Shabbos. There were two things. Rav Elazar of Shimon built his sheet on 2 points. Rav Akiva, the only things that are Deicha Shabbos must be done on Shabbos, and Rabbi Yishmael cutting the Omer is Deicha Shabbos. He put it together. What does Rabbi hold? Rabbi holds it's not Deicha Shabbos. Yeah, that's it. He holds like Rabbi Akiva. Taka, you're only Deicha Shabbos things that must be done on Shabbos. But because he holds it doesn't have to be cut on Friday night, it's not Deicha Shabbos. Simple. You made a whole presumption that he holds like Rabbi Yishmael also. No, he holds like Rabbi Akiva, not Rabbi Yishmael. Now, the reason why that was a chiddush is because we've been going this whole thing that is Deicha Shabbos, Deicha Shabbos, Deicha Shabbos. Who said? Says the Gemara, Ela Kasav Rebbe, K'tzir Sa'omer Loi Dachya Shabbos. Cutting the Omer is not Deicha Shabbos. V'loi, v'hatanan, v'chachamim Oimrim, Echad Shabbos, Echachal, Mishal Sheba. But doesn't the Mishnah say that they would cut it on Shabbos as well? Loi Rebbe. That's not like Rabbi. I v'chacham Oimrim, doesn't the Mishnah continue? Echad b'Shabbos, v'echad b'chol, b'shloish, b'shalosh kubas, b'shalosh megalis. That on Shabbos they would cut it with 3 sickles. To like Rabbi, not like Rabbi. I u'b'Shabbos, doesn't the Mishnah also say that on Shabbos, Yarmin lahem Shabbos zu, the person who is doing with the pomp and circumstance, who say it's Shabbos, should I cut it? They cut it on Shabbos. To like Rabbi. It's all not like Rabbi. Now, by the way, that means that according to Rabbi, you do not cut the Omer on Shabbos. Now, says the Gemara, just to finish up to the Mishnah. Once you get to the next parak, it's a lot easier. So today's daf at least. Says the Gemara, wait a minute. So you tell me, according to Rabbi, it's not Deicha Shabbos, but doesn't the Mishnah say Niktzer b'yoim? If the Omer was cut on the day of the 16th, it's kosher. Vid Deicha Shabbos. It says you cut it during the day. Who's the one who says you can cut it during the day? Rabbi. And it says Deicha Shabbos. What do you mean? It says not Deicha Shabbos. It says Deicha Shabbos. Man Shamili Yamar Niktzer b'yoim kasher. Who's the one who says you can cut it during the day, not at night? Rabbi. Uktani Deicha Shabbos. And it says it's Deicha Shabbos. Meaning we're talking about the cutting of the barley. It's Deicha Shabbos. My love Ktsira. So you see, it is Deicha Shabbos. So the Gemara says, no. Loi, lahakrava. No. The actual cutting of the Omer is not Deicha Shabbos. It's the bringing of the karbonis that are Deicha Shabbos. Aval Ktsira Loi. Meaning, the baking of the mincha, the bringing of the animals associated with the mincha, that's Deicha Shabbos. The actual cutting of the barley, it could be done on Erev Shabbos, not Deicha Shabbos. So when the Mishnah says Deicha Shabbos, it doesn't mean the cutting of the barley. It means the actual bringing of the carbon, the bringing of the baking of it, whatever. Not the grinding, not the cutting. The baking of the mincha is Deicha Shabbos. Huh? Correct.
What's the difference? They're both being Deicha Shabbos.
Because the cutting could be done Erev Shabbos. You can't bake it Erev Shabbos because then it'll have lina. It'll be disqualified by the overnight. You have no choice. So when it says by the Omer, it's Deicha Shabbos, it's talking about not the cutting, it's talking about the bringing of the carbon of the Omer. Okay. Says the Gemara, is that true? So when it says Omer is Deicha Shabbos, it doesn't mean the cutting. Vatanya, this Brisa says, it's a lengthy Brisa, but the Brisa is basically saying, how do I know the karbanos at Deicha Shabbos? Says the Brisa, Rabbi Omer, V'yidaber Moshe es me'edei Hashem, I only know that the carbon tamid is Deicha Shabbos and the carbon Pesach is Deicha Shabbos, because the pasuk says they have to be brought at their prescribed time. That even if it's Shabbos, it has to be brought. That's by the Pesach and the tamid. Shar karbanos atziva menayin. How do I know the rest of the karbanit tziva are Deicha Shabbos? Talmud loymar elu tasu laHashem b'mayadechem. That these are Deicha Shabbos. Keep going. Menayin l'rabas omer v'hakarav imo. How do I know to include the carbon omer and that animals that come with it? They're also Deicha Shabbos. Or shtei alechem v'hakarav imo, and the shtei alechem are Deicha Shabbos. How do I know the omer and the shtei alechem are Deicha Shabbos? Talmud loymar v'idab Moshe me'edei Hashem. Akasav kava l'kulan. Me'edei Hashem means that it has to be brought on Yom Tov, so it has to be brought at prescribed time, even Shabbos. So what does the Brisa say? The omer is Deicha Shabbos, and the shtei alechem is Deicha Shabbos. So what are you going to say? The omer doesn't mean the grinding. It doesn't mean that. It means the carbon. The burning on the mizbeach, not the baking, the burning on the mizbeach. Here's the thing though. The omer and the shtei alechem are Deicha Shabbos. So the omer means the burning on the mizbeach. And the shtei alechem, you don't burn the shtei alechem on the mizbeach. The shtei alechem is entirely eaten. So what are we talking about? If you're telling me that when it says Deicha Shabbos, it's not talking about the grinding. If it's talking about the grinding, it makes a lot of sense. You grind the shtei alechem, you grind the omer, Deicha Shabbos. Now you say, no. Grinding is, the cutting and the grinding are not Deicha Shabbos. It's the burning on the Mizbeach that's Deicha Shabbos. But then the Shtei Alechem, it also says Deicha Shabbos. There's no burning on the Mizbeach for Shtei Alechem. The Shtei Alechem is entirely eaten. So what's going on? Says the Gemara, Lamai, Ilem Lakrav, if you means burning on the Mizbeach, Shtei Alechem b'nei Hakravin ninu. But the Shtei Alechem are not burned on the Mizbeach. El Pshita l'tchin of Arkada. It must be the cutting, the milling, the sifting. It must be the Shtei Alechem is the making of the flour, and therefore by the oimer it's the making of the cutting of the barley. Because Shabbos, you see it's Deicha Shabbos, because again it equates oimer and Shtei Alechem. And don't tell me the oimer is burning, because the Shtei Alechem doesn't have burning on the Mizbeach. It doesn't have that. So what's Deicha Shabbos? Again, by the Shtei Alechem, if I were to ask you, it's Deicha Shabbos, what's the only option you could think of? The cutting, the grinding, the milling, the sifting, whatever, that's Deicha Shabbos. Because there is nothing else. There's no burning on the Mizbeach. What else is there? So it must be the Oimer is the same thing. So you see, it's a raya, the Oimer is Deicha Shabbos. Says the Gemara, no. Oimer is Lahakrava. Really, the Oimer is Deicha Shabbos, not the cutting and not the grinding. It's the burning on the Mizbeach. That's Deicha Shabbos. So what about Shtei Alechem? What's Deicha Shabbos? It's also the burning. What do you mean burning? You don't burn the Shtei Alechem. The answer is it's the baking of it. Meaning the baking of it in the oven is Deicha Shabbos. Now let me ask you a question. Why can't I bake it out of Shabbos? So bake it Erev Shabbos. Why not? What's the problem? Why would it be Deicha Shabbos? Why would I bake it? It's bread. Bake it Erev Shabbos. The answer is he holds that what's Mekadesh the Shtei Halechem is the oven. And therefore, if you were to bake it Erev Shabbos, it's already Kaddish in a Kli Sharis. Once it's Kaddish in a Kli Sharis, it becomes disqualified at night. So it has to be baked on Shabbos itself. Shtei Alechem Lafiyah, Ukasava Rebbe holds Taner Mekadesh, that what makes it holy is the oven itself. And the Afila Me'etzmal, and if you were to bake it Erev Shabbos, Isla Belina, it will be disqualified. Therefore, by the Shtei Alechem, what's Deicha Shabbos is the baking, and the Omer, which Deicha Shabbos is not the cutting or the grinding, it's the burning on the Mizbeach. Because why can't I bake the Shtei Alechem Erev Shabbos? Because the Shtei Alechem become kaddish by the tanur, and if you bake it Erev Shabbos, it'll be ifsal belina. Says the Gemara, just to finish up the parak. Wait. So what's mekadesh the Shtei Alechem is the oven? I thought we have a brisa that says that what's mekadesh the Shtei Alechem is shechting the animals that are associated with the Shtei Alechem. Says the Gemara, v'savar Rabbi tanur mekadesh. What makes the Shtei Alechem, the two loaves that are brought to Shavuos holy, is the baking in the oven. Vatanya, but doesn't the brisa say kivsei atzeres ein mekadesh alechem ela b'shchita? I thought it's the shchita of the shlomim that's mekadesh the lechem, not the baking. Ketzad, shachtan lishman v'zarg daman lishman. If you shecht it properly, kiddush alechem, the lechem are sanctified. Shachtan shloi lishman v'zarg daman shloi lishman, loy kiddush alechem. But if you did not shecht it properly, it's not kaddish. And shachtan lishman v'zarg daman shloi lishman. If you shecht it properly but don't do the zrika, then alechem kaddish ain't a kaddish. Kaddish ain't a kaddish. Divrei Rabbi. The Rav Elazar Shimon Amid kaddish yishchat zan v'yizmer dam lishman. Rav Elazar Shimon holds it's only kaddish if you do the shchita and the zrika. The point is, what's makdish the lechem is not the baking, it's the shchita and the zrika. So what's going on? It's the shchita that's makdish the lechem. So what's going on? The answer is Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak hukvu v'loy hukvu ka'amar. No, what's makdish the lechem is the baking, that it'll be disqualified by being overnight. I thought the shechting is magdish it. No. The shechting makes it not holy. It makes it set to these animals, meaning that I cannot replace these animals or this bread with other bread, or I can't replace these animals with other animals. What makes it drawn to each other, that they're now bound together, is the shechita. That before the shechita I can pick other animals. Once I shecht it, I cannot pick other animals, and if these animals become disqualified, I need new bread. What makes the bread holy is the tanur. The shechita just binds the bread to the animals. That if something goes wrong with the animals, you have to replace the bread. But it's not holy. The holiness is from the baking of the oven. Hajj and Allah, Rav Yishmael. Let's start the new parak. We'll just finish up. The parak begins like this. Most carbon minchas, you have to do a kmitza. Most carbon minchas, by the way, we're back in Menachos. Most carbon minchas, you do the kmitza, you burn the kmitza, and you eat the shirayim. The kehanim eat the shirayim. That's most carbon minchas. Says the Mishnah, Elu menachos nikmatzos v'shirayim lakehanim. These are the standard mincha, that there's a kmitza, and the remainder is eaten by the kehanim. Which are those? Mincha soiles, which is the donated mincha, hamachvas, the donated machvas, hamarcheshes, the donated marcheshes, hachalas, harakikin, donated chalas, donated wafers, minchas oivdei kechavim, if a guy donates a mincha, minchas nashim, if a woman donates a mincha, minchas oimer, the oimer, minchas chayte, a sinner's mincha, minchas kanais, and a soita's mincha. All of these have a kmitza, and the remainder are eaten by the kehanim. Rav Shimon says, minchas chayte shel kehanim nikmetzas. The kaimitz karv la'atzmai, the shirayim karv la'atzmai. Big chiddush, but if you're doing shnai mikra, this is yesterday's, that the pasuk tells us, kehanim, when they bring a mincha, there is no kmitza. You just burn the entire thing. Let's go 2 more minutes. You burn the entire thing when your kehanim donate a mincha. What if the kohen is the sinner? So here's what you do, says Rosh Shimon. Pashas, you just burn the whole thing. Says Rosh Shimon, no, here's what you do. You do a kmitza, burn the kmitza, then burn the rest. So you're burning the whole thing, but you still have to do a kmitza. It's a big chiddush of Rav Shimon. Pashtus, according to the Rabbanan, when a kohen donates a mincha, it's all burnt. So what's the point of a kmitza? Kmitza is to separate. I separate this, and then I eat the rest. Says Rosh Shimon, no, if a kohen is the sinner, you do a kmitza, burn the kmitza, and then burn the rest. It's a chiddush of Rav Shimon. Let's just finish up. Amr Rav Papa, Kol Heicha, we had this many times already. Kol Heicha de Tanan Esa Tanan. Rav Papa is telling you that there are 10 cases in the Mishnah. What's the chiddush? My kamash malan. I counted it. What's the chiddush? La'afuke midir Rav Shimon. Damar mechza chalos umechza rakikin yavi kamash malan deloy. It's a chiddush of not like Rav Shimon, because Rav Shimon's shita is that you're able to donate chalos or rakikin. Our Mishnah said chalos, you're able to donate loaves or rakikin or wafers. Rav Shimon believes that you could donate a combination 5 and 5. If you are donating 10, you could combine 5 and 5. That's Rav Shimon shita. Our Mishnah does not have that as an option. Our Mishnah has chalas, comma, wafers, comma, not chalas and wafers, and that's our Mishnah's count of 10 is lafuki Rav Shimon, who would add an 11th. Let's just finish up. One quick Gemara. Our Mishnah said that all menachos, these 10 menachos, there's the kmitza that you burn on the Mizbeach, and the remainder are eaten by the Kehanim. Says the Gemara, how do I know this? Min Olan. So the Gemara says, what do you mean Min Olan? How do I know the Kehanim eat the remainder? It's Mefurish in the Pasuk. Says the Gemara, Dechsiva. Most of them, it says it outright, Ksiva, and a Deloi Ksiva, and if it doesn't outright say it, Ksivba, there's a general Pasuk by the all Menachos that says, Zos Taurus HaMincha, this is the rule of all Menachos, Hakrevosa, B'nei Aaron, the Aaron and his sons burn the kmitza, and the remainder are eaten by Aaron and his sons, meaning it's mefurish pasuk. So why do I need a special Gemara asking, how do I know the Kehanim eat the rest? The pasuk says the Kehanim always eat the rest. What's the chiddush? Says the Gemara, I'm not asking when the mincha is made of wheat, which is the majority of them. I'm talking about ba'as sa'orin. How do I know that the Kehanim eat the remainder when it's barley? What are the 2 cases of barley? The 2 cases of barley is the sotas mincha and the minchas ha'omer. How do I know in those cases the Kohanim eat the remainder? Says the Gemara, ba'asaronami midikmetzes shir nechalim. The Kohanim, I don't understand. You want to know what's the source? I'm bringing the sinner's mincha, or the omer, which is barley. How do I know? I do the kmitza, that I know. The pasuk is kmitza. How do I know the remainder is eaten by the Kohanim? You say, well, the pasuk says so. Pasuk's talking about wheat. This is barley. You say, well, what's the difference? You do a kmitza. If you're doing a kmitza, that means the remainder is going to be eaten. So what do I? Once I know there's a kmitza, by definition I know the remainder is eaten. The answer is not according to Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon in the Mishnah says that by the sinner's mincha v'kayin, you do the kmitza and burn it, and then you burn the rest. So you see that it's not such a given that having a kmitza automatically indicates the remainder are eaten, and therefore we need a source that if it's barley, that while there is a kmitza in the pasuk, it's not mefurish in the pasuk that you eat the rest. How do I know this? Ali b'derabban aloykam iboyle ki kam boyle ali b'der Rav Shimon. According to Shimon, you have a kmitza that's not, the remainder are not eaten. It's not. Rav Shimon, so there is a possibility of doing a kmitza and burning the remainder. So how do I know, according to Rav Shimon, that by a barley mincha, which is the omer and the sinner and the mincha sota, how do I know that although there's a kmitza in the Torah, how do I know you eat the rest? And the answer is one with this. There's an extra pasuk in the Torah. It says, Chol mincha belula b'shemen. The chareva, any mincha that's mixed with oil or that is dry, l'chol b'nei Aaron tiyeh. It's eaten by the Kohanim. This is extra. Im eino inyan leblula shel chitin. If it's not necessary for wheat because it's already covered, teneu inyan leblula shel saorim. Apply it to barley. Im eino inyan lechareva shel chitin. And if it does not apply to a dry of wheat, teneu inyan lechareva shel saorim. This pasuk is extra, and therefore we say while the pasuk describes wheat, it's really referring to barley. We'll stop here.